Thank you, Leslie. I am so honored to be here tonight to give you this little presentation. And I'm going to call it A Life Journey in Tau Beta Sigma equals Friendships and Families. When you do something for the very first time, it's hard to know exactly where to begin. Do you start at the very beginning, which rumor has it is a very good place to start? Or do you remind all those listening who have a common bond with you that because I know you, Tau Beta Sigma, and I knew you, Wava, Janet, and so many others, I have been changed for good. Putting this presentation together throughout the month of June, which just happens to be my happy month, a little each day has brought back a lot of memories, not just of Tau Beta Sigma, but also family, or should I say families and friendships that are lifelong. The funny thing about thinking about what to say about my journey in Tau Beta Sigma, and you'll hear the word journey a lot today, made me realize and remember that a long time ago, in so many ways, I was no different than any of you sitting here listening to me today. I was a member of my university band, not having any idea that when I joined this group called Tau Beta Sigma, that I, Sue Carr, would be here telling you my story some 48 years later. This life journey began on the day I was initiated, October 14th, 1974, etched in my brain, at the Delta chapter at the University of Massachusetts. Now, you must remember that life was so much simpler and smaller in the early 70s. By this, I mean the Umass marching band marched between 100 and 200 members between the years of 73 and 76, my personal marching band years. Everything was mimeographed or carbon paper, or yeah, we did have those big copying machines too. You had to use a telephone that had a cord and a typewriter. But I imagine you've heard all that before, back when from your parents and your grandparents, I guess back then, I never imagined that I would even be a parent, much less a grandparent. Think about this. How many of you sitting here were the only one in your circle of friends that went to college and joined the marching band? I'm pretty sure that may be true for a few, but not all within the sound of my voice, because obviously Tau Beta Sigma would not be a part of your life. However, that's not why I asked the question. I was the only one amongst all my close friends and family that could say that every fall when I returned to college from band camp, I honestly had hundreds of friends, old and new. None of my friends from my hometown ever had that experience, being a part of not just my UMass marching band family, but also friends who were part of a national fraternal family in Tau Beta Sigma and Kappa Kappa Psi. One thing I do always remember is that some of these hometown friends from nearly 50 years ago, which number a couple dozen or so, we all still gather on a regular basis. It's my hope that someday all of you will have these friendships that basically last forever. Whether high school friends, college friends, friends along the way, or sisters and brothers in TBS and KKSI. It's not just my friends from high school years that I remain in close contact with, but also the alumni friends from the UMass marching band. Some were before me, some during my college years, and some even after me. Sisters and brothers, all of us. So now, for my Tau Beta Sigma journey. Thinking back to all the different sorts of activities that I've written about, brief versions of in various podium articles and other newsletters, for most I have a set list of things of which to write. Never in all these writings did I think about exactly what I accomplished or about the many folks that I would ultimately have a hand in their future successes. While an undergrad and TBS sister, I was the uniform manager for the marching band. Remember, we only averaged 150, not the 400 plus of today. And as an upperclassman, I was the assistant band manager, a position that was created just for me for my final 2 years. As for TBS, I served as the chapter president and co-chair of the then District 9 convention at UMass my senior year, which was probably the catalyst for what was to come with me for Tau Beta, to come for me with Tau Beta Sigma. What you must understand is that the district convention the year before was at the University of Maryland, I think, and I was approached by then past National President Carol Blaine and the current National President Becky Hartman to see if I could get permission from the university and the music department to host the 1977 district convention at Umass. Obviously, there were no bids in the Northeast, or District 9 at the time, for convention that year. I want you all to understand that I had absolutely no idea whatsoever at that time that these very special women saw in me any sort of leadership potential. Absolutely none. At the time, I knew they were important folks in the sorority, but never thought that I would someday be their peer, much less ultimately serve on the board of trustees with them. Which recalls a very important aspect in understanding how I perceived national leadership in my early years in TBS, compared to today's what feels like a totally new world. My chapter was still in its development stages. The 6 of us in our pledge class, which just happened to be the 6th initiate class, as I vaguely remember, did not really have to do much during our pledging period, other than a service project for our band and another for our chapter. Naturally, we always helped when called upon in whatever capacity was necessary. Learning the Greek alphabet and all the names of the national leadership and special folks were not a high priority for us back then. You must also understand that the only communications we got from national were news notes that came in the mail, and the twice-a-year publication of the podium for dues paying members only, and that also only came in the mail. Being the host for the district convention was really the first time that I truly understood how Tau Beta Sigma and Kappa Kappa Psi worked together for college bands. Hard to believe, I bet, but truer than you would ever know. I really had no concept about what the national side of Tau Beta Sigma and Kappa Kappa Psi was all about. But getting back to my journey, after graduation, my Delta Delta sister Anne and I made plans to travel for my first national convention, which in 1977 was held at UCLA in Los Angeles. And we drove across country, up and across Canada, and then down into Washington, and then basically down the intercoastal Route 1 to get to the convention. Not really understanding how these national conventions worked, being the delegate got me appointed to the convention site committee as co-chair with Beta Gamma from LSU, Kappa Kappa Psi. Honesty comes into play again, as these were the times of Title IX and all the arguments for and against, which at that time literally went right over my head. Although I served on the convention site committee, I was not able to attend the next national convention, which was at Georgia Tech in 1979. Proudly, though, I have not missed a single national convention since, so you do the math. The band world at UMass changed in the fall after my graduation with the arrival of Mr. George Parks. Gone were the days of what we used to march the Michigan High Step. Mr. Parks brought a new spirit and style of marching to the UMass marching band that turned that program, and I think the country, completely around and grew the bands in ways I never could have imagined back then. It was a year or so later that Delta Delta requested that I be asked to be the chapter sponsor, and I accepted. Please understand, back then, the former band director's spouse had been the chapter sponsor. It was time for a change, and this was in the fall of 1979. As the chapter sponsor, I got all the paperwork and information about the district, along with the minutes from the 1979 National Convention, which I thoroughly read to find out that there was the possibility of starting a local alumni association. As you can probably guess, I found a group of willing sisters and launched the New England Alumni Association, and paid whatever was necessary for at least 2 years, as that's what I have the membership cards for. Why do I tell you this? Putting my Tau Beta Sigma journey into printed word has made me realize the moment when, unbeknownst to myself, TBS would forever be a part of my life in more ways than I would ever realize. With the upcoming national convention in 1981 at the University of Cincinnati, another Delta Delta sister, Carol, who was also an NEAA member, we'll do that for short, decided to drive with me to Cincinnati. At the convention, she would sit for either our chapter or the New England Alumni Association. I honestly cannot remember. All I remember is participating as the chapter sponsor for Delta Delta. I'll be honest again, you're going to hear a lot of honesty tonight. I cannot exactly remember what I did or even if I were on any committees. And if I was, it was more than likely it was something to do with alumni. I do know that if asked, I would help in any way that I could, along with, of course, being in awe of the fact that the National Council and members of the Board of Trustees would call on me to assist, which I did without hesitation. The new national president, Julie Coons, from 81 to 83, appointed me as the District 9 counselor for what I believe was the beginning of my true journey in Tau Beta Sigma as an alumni member in every way, shape, and form that an alumni could possibly be a part of. From the time that I assumed the role of district counselor, throughout my entire journey in Tau Beta Sigma, my biggest contribution, I feel, was being a part of the development of leadership in Tau Beta Sigma. I watched students transform from local chapters into district officers and many times into national officers for both TBS and Kappa Kappa Psi. What I want to point out to all of you is that I was no different than any of you. But as I mentioned earlier, it was a couple of national officers that saw something in me back at a district convention that sent me on the path to continue that trend of being there whenever and wherever needed. I would be there to lend an ear when necessary, be totally honest when relating to potential issues that were not always positive, that could be encountered along the way, and most importantly, be non-judgmental about any decisions that were needed. This is how I was able to show them that they could achieve success as a leader in our organizations. Personally, I have never been a stand up in front of the crowd type of leader, regardless of the role that I would be playing in TBS or in life in general. I've always classified myself as a quiet leader, living each day inside of our ideals, of which the most important to me are a truthfulness and honesty, which instills a sense of trust in others, and a cheerfulness at all times and under all circumstances, even in the face of great trial. Put all the factors and qualities in the same basket, and you will find them as the centerpiece of my heart. Let me attempt to explain where I'm going with this. Last year, for the first time in a few years, I was able to attend four district conventions, and that was only because they were all held virtually. Obviously, the difference between my days as a student and young alumni then, and you, the students and alumni of today, is obviously technology. But, and a very big but, what I experienced during all these virtual conventions was a distinct and overwhelming feeling of a different type of deja vu. Although I participated in one of the past district officer panels, what I now realize looking back is that I personally watched every one of these former district counselors, past national officers, past national presidents, and former trustees as they followed their paths to leadership in Tau Beta Sigma. I had the exact same feeling I used to have back in the day after each of these special panels had their presentations by staying and attending those four virtual conventions. I saw hope and vision from all the district leaders, from the newly appointed district officers to those that were leaving office. Then, seeing them all together in Grand Rapids at the National Convention, along with all the national officers, all the district counselors, and all the CVAs that persisted throughout the pandemic. Attending the district conventions made the National Convention an anniversary celebration of our 75 years totally historic in more ways than one for me, and a perfect prelude to the next part of my message to all of you, and a true summation of my personal journey in Tau Beta Sigma. I looked up the meaning of coda on the TBS website. discovering that the passage of life in my TBS journey included being a part of the leadership teams of every one of the 19 past national presidents that attended the anniversary celebration. As a district counselor, I had the honor of being part of the leadership team of Julie Coombs, who, although was not present at this celebration, appointed me as the district counselor, but also appointed me as the co-chair to an ad hoc committee to study alumni activities with Kappa Kappa Psi. During Julie's biennium, I also had the distinct honor of serving as a counselor with the then North Central counselor, Kathy Stevens. We were first-time counselors together. Kathy stepped in for me for the installation of Eta Alpha at Syracuse, as I was not able to attend at the last minute. I had done the pre-installation visit with my Kappa Kappa Psi counterpart, Governor Rick Albane. Kathy is up there in the great sorority of the sky with some of my other very special friends. She's always remembered at the North Central District Convention each year. Looking back, as I have for this writing, I now truly understand your past, a history bold, from our loyalty song. As an aside, these words are etched on the memorial stone in the Rose Garden in Stillwater, representing all alumni for Tau Beta Sigma. TBSAA made that happen with the first major donation to the Memorial Garden. Getting back to 2021, what we had at National Convention was our living past and our history boldly sitting in front of each of us. Such an opportunity for all of us, but very personal for me because I was a part of all of their bienniums. As a counselor, Bonnie Shula, Ann Sheets, and Carla Robinson, I witnessed the hiring of a new National Executive Director. Previously, it was called the National Executive Secretary, kind of classed up the title a little bit. And the first Joint District President's Conference was established at the Summer Council meeting in '86. I also witnessed the adoption of the national policies on hazing and alcohol. The Joint National Councils initiated the first chapter survey to assist in long-range planning, and at the conclusion of the '89 convention, I transitioned into the new role of Board of Trustees member, while at the same time mentoring my replacement as district counselor. I honestly do not recall who that was. I am so sorry. During my tenure as counselor, district growth for both Tau Beta Sigma and Kappa Kappa Psi was in its heyday. Travel expense was way less than today for district conventions, pre-installation visits, chapter installations, and all of that travel that needed to happen, mainly due to the cost of airline travel being a quarter of what it is today. And most importantly, gas less than $2 a gallon. I bet that's hard to believe when we look at where we are today. As a member of the Board of Trustees, it was truly fascinating for me to not sit on the sidelines, but be a part of all the changes and programs and projects as they took root. It was also very humbling to sit on our board, which at that time was made up solely of past national presidents, which included those that got me involved with TBS to begin with, those that as counselor brought me along to this very point in my journey, all of whom I would share the bonds of friendship and sisterhood always. Most importantly, my time on the board was the beginnings of special friendships that I would have until their final skyward journeys in TBS with our founder, Waver, and with the past national president, Janet Westmiller. A little more about them shortly. Serving as a board member during the biennia of Kathy Rotifer, Rita Gardner, Jean Newman, and Gretchen Buchan was a period of incredible development, incredible innovation, and change, not just for Tau Beta Sigma, but also for Kappa Kappa Psi, in so many ways, but especially in the realms of our alumni. Over the course of the next 8 years, our history shows a complete revision of our ritual, a change with the National Intercollegiate Band Rehearsal, which occurs now before convention as the opening of the convention with the concert, rather than as it had been with the NIB previously rehearsing throughout the week with the concert on Thursday evening. Let me throw in some context here. Up until the biennium of 93-95, the national conventions were held on college and university campuses, with all participants And I mean all participants, staying in the dorms of the host school. For me, that was UCLA, Cincinnati, Texas Tech, Kansas, Michigan, and Purdue. It made for some very interesting accommodations. Corporate sites would start at the Orlando Convention in '95. It was awesome when the National Council acquired Stillwater Station as our national headquarters. The TBS chapter field representative program began with the first CFR, Kimberly Trotter, and Project SOS, Save Our Station, jointly assisted with Kappa Psi with repairs and the restoration of Stillwater Station. We had our 50th anniversary celebration in Orlando, and one of my favorite memories was when the NIB performed at Disney World. This gave me another flashback. How lucky am I to be able to say that I also saw the NIB perform at Disneyland at the 1977 convention, conducted by Carmen Dragon, one of so many incredible NIB performances over all my years of doing what I'm doing. Back at Epcot on that day, I happened to be hanging out with Wava, and we made our way to the American Pavilion, waiting for the band to perform, not realizing that we were half a world, literally and figuratively, away from where the actual NIB performance was. This was a perfect example of not having technology in our pockets like we do today, which means that once we figured out we were in the wrong place, we included Wava, her husband Reese, Wava's daughter Sandra and her children, Jean, and a few others, and me. We had less than 20 minutes to get to the performance site. Some walked very fast, some walked, we'll leave it at that. And I think some may even have rode the British bus, but we all made it, although huffing and puffing, with a few minutes to spare. Thinking of Wava, it was an honor and privilege for me to spend timeless moments with her. We were always sharing moments and stories about my son Michael and her granddaughter Lindsay, as they were the same age. Lindsay's horseback riding adventures, Michael's children's theater and choir school stories. That was the personal side for me. For you, my beloved audience listening here, Wava was a rock star, which is why I called you an audience, of course, at the national conventions. I thought of myself as her personal handler, clearing a path for her, along with being an assistant photographer. Back then, I did not realize how many different types and sizes of cameras there were, but I sure learned how to use them all. Phones did not take pictures. Whether in a hallway or at a meal or after a PNP session at the national convention, Wava would be there for each and every one. It didn't matter how long or how many flashbulbs it would take. I know there is someone, probably a lot of someone's listening here today, that had that special feeling of having their picture with Wava, whether solo or with your chapter. I know I've shared mine on Facebook. It was at the 1987 convention in Michigan. You've all seen it, Wava in a pink dress and me in a flowery dress. I even have one of Wava and the Delta Delta sisters at the Orlando convention in 2007. I have many stories of Wava. Makes me smile. Most of them are such happy memories. They're all such happy memories. Getting back to my journey though, after the 50th celebration, it was my honor to serve as the chair of the Board of Trustees from 2005 to 7. During this time, this particular biennium, the time capsule was buried at Stillwater Station at the summer meeting in '96, concluding the 50th anniversary celebration. The mission statement was created, and the Women in Music speaker series got off the ground. It was also during this biennium in 1997 that the National Alumni Association of Kappa Kappa Psi and Tau Beta Sigma was chartered. An interesting fact, as a result of the '95 convention delegation constitutional change, it was determined that a limit of 2 consecutive terms was placed on the Board of Trustee members. I was at the end of my second term, and though it was difficult for me not to be able to run again, it was also a blessing in disguise. One of the main reasons I believe for the institution of the rule was for board members to take time off for a biennium. That doesn't mean you walk away forever. For me, it was a time of reflection. I remained active with the newly formed Joint Alumni Association and with Tau Beta Sigma as a whole. Sure, it was different attending the convention for the first time in a long time as an alumni participant. But remember when I told you that I played a major role in moving the leadership development along? Reflecting back on this now being the convention in '99, here before me, running the convention, were all those sisters that I had the distinct opportunity of watching develop from district leaders to now national officers. I really wanted to be a part of that board again, so I ran and was elected. For the next 8 years, I would mostly serve as the TBS board liaison to the National Alumni Association. During my biennium away from the board, Debbie Kaplan's leadership team worked toward implementing strategic planning, decreasing by half the debt of Stillwater Station, and began the development of new marketing tools for Tau Beta Sigma. Serving on the board as a trustee with Karen Hammond Miller, Sylvia Halberdier, Debbie Baker, and Kathy Godwin saw continued strategic planning along with the implementation of new scholarships and the guide to membership education. During this time, the Board of Trustees saw many new faces, which included the return of past national presidents Carla Robinson and Patsy Hale, along with other individuals, Kathy Miles, Leanne Jones-Weiser, Stacey Sabra, Ellen Harriet, Ed Elsie, Melanie Meehan, just to name a few. The Capital Development Plan was implemented and scholarship programs were initiated, along with the continuous growing of the Tau Beta Sigma Trust Fund. At the summer meeting of 2006, the Kappa Kappa Psi Board of Trustees solely made the decision to dissolve the National Alumni Association of Kappa Kappa Psi and Tau Beta Sigma, just as the NAA was preparing to celebrate their first 10 years. Within the next year, I will simply state that Tau Beta Sigma alone put together a steering committee, created a guideline that brought the charter proposal to the National Convention in 2007. That proposal was adopted and the TBS-AA was created with an executive committee. I volunteered to be a part of the newly formed TBS-AA as I had reached the end of my Board of Trustees' second 8th year. And as they say, with TBS-AA, the rest is history. By the end of 2007, TBS-AA had a charter membership of close to 100 alumni sisters and many Kappa Kappa Psi brothers. My numbers may not be spot on, but they're kind of close. We were the phoenix rising on the road to the incredible alumni association we have today. I never imagined, although it was always the hope to get 500 dues-paying members, but here we are, and now 2022, wow, over 500 members. There were so many sisters and brothers that helped me to drive the beginnings of TBS-AA. In particular, we always need to remember Chris Vanacore, Kelly Edson, Debbie Baker, Ed Elsie, and Tamara Henry, to name a few. I think I need to thank Tamara most of all, as it was her inspiration to create the Distinguished Alumni Award, which now is a national award named for me. I'm not going to go into any other great detail about TBS-AA other than to say how proud I am to have been a part of its grassroots beginning. Not to mention that I was able to remain on the leadership teams for the next 6 years of Kimby Single, Dolly O'Neill, and Dawn Farmer. During these years, Tau Beta Sigma saw continued strategic planning, membership growth, and fiscal strength. During the 2011-13 biennium, our beloved founder, Wava, passed away. Dawn and her council honored Wava in so many ways. An incredible memorial ceremony at the National Convention in Springfield, Mass., which was kind of home base for me, of course, and the initial designs for the Wava Memorial Garden at Stillwater Station, which is where that memorial stone that I spoke of earlier sits in the middle. Just being myself, just being me, I've continued to guide our younger alumni into roles of leadership, and it's wonderful to see them all succeeding today as national offices, district officers, district counselors, and CVAs. I'm thankful to Nicole Sanchez, Catherine Kelly, Jonathan Markowski, and Adrian Rao for inviting me to participate in workshops at your national conventions, where many of you have heard the stories of my journeys, but none like this today have I ever done. I know that I never really touched on all the wonderful sisters and brothers that have crossed my path throughout this journey. If I tried to name them all, it would take hours, as I know that I personally touched a lot of sisters and brothers of both Tau Beta Sigma and Kappa Kappa Psi. There are a few that I must tell you about. They're part of that great fraternity of sisters and brothers in the sky. I know that I mentioned Weva. I live every day with Weva as a part of my heart. I honor her with butterflies always, as this organization that she founded for all of us is an everlasting part of me. And I hope that whether you met her in person or learned about Weva after her passing, you too will forever keep her with you always. Janet West Miller was also a very special friend. And again, it was all about our kids. I had the privilege of watching her daughter live her dream to be a legacy. And she always kept tabs on my son, Michael, and ultimately his children too. Those are the grandkids I mentioned way back at the start of this. Patsy Hale was, I think, 12th president, past national president, was another friend that my son and I always visited with her and her husband, James, when they traveled to Boston. As at that time, Michael was a chorister and a bell choir member, which led to some pretty cool music-related discussions. Kathy Stevens, I mentioned earlier, was the district counselor when she passed. I also want to mention Kappa Kappa Psi brother Rick Albany, who was the district governor in the now Northeast, then District 9. He also was on that ad hoc joint alumni committee back in the 80s. Just a couple of years ago, the Northeast bid farewell to yet another governor, Brother Sarah Fitzgerald. Her loss was strongly felt to this day for the sisters and brothers of the Northeast. Watching Sarah grow into the different leadership roles in the district was a true example of the growth of a young leader in our organizations today. Kappa Kappa Psi past national president Stan Fink was, to me, one of the most prominent past national presidents of Kappa Kappa Psi, who I had the distinct honor of serving with while on the Board of Trustees. I've always believed that Stan saw our two organizations as parallel and honored his beliefs with his bequest at his passing. That's my personal understanding of his intentions. He was a true gentleman who loved band and the missions of Tau Beta Sigma and Kappa Kappa Psi. There are so many others, but these are the ones that I carry with me in my heart. This past month has been like the movie in my mind. That's a lyric from Miss Saigon. Telling you some not before mentioned facts of my journey, forgetting to tell you about all the incredible people that Tau Beta Sigma and Kappa Kappa Psi have brought into my life. Well, I can't list them all, obviously. I've met with, conversed with, and dined with composers, conductors, women in music speakers, band directors, and so many others. Some of my favorites include Diva Jazz at the 2005 National Convention, Boston Brass at quite a few conventions, and Julie Giroux in 1999, 2015, and during a workshop at one of those virtual conventions last year. Coral Coleman is another speaker in 2011, who at that time was touring with Beyonce and played at the halftime at the Super Bowl that followed her presentation to us in 2012. And most recently with Alex Shapiro for the incredible performance of the NIB last year. I need to mention two TBS AA sponsored women in music speakers, Susan Horowitz at the 2009, the first time that TBS AA was doing anything at convention. We sponsored her as our women in music speaker. And also in 2013 in Springfield was Liz Shropshire. I remain friends on social media with most. I have incredible memories of all the national intercollegiate band performances at all the national conventions and the variety of the works I really have no words to describe how full my heart is from the music that is part of it. And then just a little, self-promotion, of course. I was the recipient of the Waiver Award at the 1995 National Convention in Kansas, the Distinguished Service Award in 2011 in Colorado, Kappa Kappa Psi honorary membership in 2015, and Tau Beta Sigma honorary national membership in 2017. Although I've wandered far from home to so many places, schools, districts, vacation spots, there were just a few times that I was able to bring my family along. I've mentioned, but not really spoken about them. My husband, Rich, had no idea what he was getting himself into when he married me 39 years ago this coming October, but he knows what Tau Beta Sigma means to me. My son, Michael, attended his first district convention at 2 months old at the University of Maine in 1986. And along with Rich, national conventions in Maryland, where we got to see the silent drill team and National Zoo. That was cool for him. Orlando, where, as Leslie told you in my bio, they got to see the space shuttle come off the launch pad. Phoenix, we got to the Grand Canyon, and St. Louis, the Arch, and the Budweiser plant for my husband. But anyway, in Bush. He probably knows a lot. My son probably knows a lot more than he'd admit about Tau Beta Sigma. In our house, they both are reminded every hour of every day as they must pass my waiver award at the bottom of our stairs. So, what do you think? Has this been a history lesson, a Tau Beta Sigma history lesson, or what? Remember, this is my personal journey, and it's been such an honor to have been selected to serve so many years ago. And yet, here I still am today. There is so much more, but so little time. How about this? If you have a question about anything I may have touched on, or something you may want to hear a little more about, let's set up and send me an email. I know you guys like text, but let's send me an email, and I promise that I will reply. It may take me a while if I get a whole bunch, that's for sure. I'll ask Leslie to post my email address for you. Thank you. With all my sisters, I am the best.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sue. I think we all really enjoyed that. Let us keep the recording on, because I think your wit and genius is not done yet. We want to keep recording this for preservation's sake. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand, I will unmute you. Or do you have?
You are going to have to figure that out. I've got to figure out how to get my screen back.
That's okay. We'll get you.
Well,
everyone's thinking up of the perfect question right now, so no worries. We are giving you.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm lost. This is with me and technology don't get along very well.
Are you trying to? Oh,
I can't get my. I can't.
Click on the side. Check the blue. Do you have a blue?
A blue little message thing?
Click that. Click that. Maybe that'll show up. Or the Zoom logo. Click that. Maybe we'll come back to you.
Yeah, no, that was something that didn't work.
Okay.
All right, I'll figure it out.
Okay.
I'll just listen. You can tell me what's going on.
Yeah, you're good. All right. Any questions from anybody out in the crowd? Let's see. Allison has a question. Go ahead.
I got it back. Wait a minute. Let me get a full screen here so I can see everybody. All right. Ooh, there we go. Okay, I'm back.
All right.
Okay.
My question for you, obviously you talked about, I personally think of you, and I know that we have a close personal relationship too, but as like our living timeline with connections back to the very beginnings of the organization, and then through your work and your continued involvement to the current and to the future too, which I love and really appreciate in getting to know you. As you were on the leadership team in so many different capacities for such a long time, what do you think was like that string that kept you going through all of the ups and downs of your service and the different changes within the organization?
I don't know. It's interesting because I think it was always being there. I don't know how else to describe it. If anything needed to happen, I was there. But I always, as I said earlier, I was the quiet leader. I was the one, if something needed to be done, I was always part of the team that made it happen. I never really enjoyed or am comfortable being that person that's sitting up in front of the room, which I astounded myself by doing this speech thing, because this was just so out of my comfort zone. But I hope it was great for everybody. I truly do. So that I really can't answer the question specifically, because I think there was just right place, right time. I mean, so many things developed along the way. And, granted, a lot of the things that I mentioned, as I listed them off, they were things that the councils did, but, the big picture is the Board of Trustees was just overseeing most of it, and just being there and helping. And it's that leadership thing is that I promote that. I mean, to me, watching leaders develop, to me, that was the role I felt I played. I pushed people along. I told people if I didn't think it was going to be a good fit, I let them know, and they either listened to me or they didn't. But there's success stories out there that are just phenomenal, and there's such a pride that I have, because I know that I had a little piece of a lot of people that are out there.
Excellent. Cool. We have a question from Alex from Eta Gamma in the audience. In all your years as a sister, what has been your biggest takeaway? And then also, what is it? Oh, we'll ask that question first, then I'll continue after you answer that.
My greatest takeaway? I don't know. I think it's just it's, I don't know. I think it's more that I got to meet and listen to and watch, and I don't have one thing specific. I can't even name one thing specifically. To me, my greatest takeaway was that I had a friendship with Wava. Okay, that to me, that was one of the greatest joys of my life with TBS. It really truly was. But I've met so many people along the way, from the people that worked at headquarters. I watched headquarter transitions, and it was just a little bit of everybody from everywhere. Boards of trustees, national councils, both sides, Kappa Kappa Psi and Tau Beta Sigma. I worked with everybody, and I don't know. That probably didn't answer your question, but it's
All good.
I don't have single answers to anything.
That's okay too. Doesn't have to be. Going along with that, Alex also asks, this is also going to be an open-ended question for you, so good luck to you. What does it mean? What does it mean for you to be a sister?
Wow.
Right?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think I've ever. Very funny, Alex. I see you laughing over there. I don't know. I mean, to be a sister, I'm a sister. I'm a brother. I'm a little bit of everything. It means the world to me, because I honestly believe that as a sister, I carry our ideals in my heart every day. And I wasn't kidding when I said that, we only have a bathroom in the upstairs here, and you can't go to the bathroom without having to pass by my waiver. So my family is destined to have to always be aware of my sisterhood. So, it's a part of my heart. It's a part of my life. It's just something, I don't know. I hope it's the same for every single person listening to me. I really, truly do. It's something I've taken all these years through all my personal trials, personal tragedies, fraternal tragedies, trials, transitions, good times, bad times, you name it. But I'm always a sister. I've always been a sister, and I'm a sister to every single one of you sitting here listening to me.
Sure. Yeah.
Does that answer your question? I mean, it is an open-ended question. Okay, cool.
Cool. All right, we've got Steve. We'll have him ask the closing question for us tonight.
Hi, Sue.
Hi, Steve.
I don't really have a question for you other than to say that I don't think I truly appreciated how our journeys have been so intertwined over the last 40 years. You know, my journey is completely different than yours, but there were so many touch points along the way. And I'm really glad that you shared your personal timeline, because you reminded me of so many wonderful people, especially like Stan Fink and just some of the others. My first national convention was 1981. So I got to know Julie Kuhns and all since then. So I just want to say that I invite you for dinner at the next national convention so we can sit down and talk about past history. So
Oh, it's a parallel. It's a date. Trust me.
yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm just, Tau Beta Sigma has been such a part of my life. And the fact that I know that I've touched so many different people from so many different walks of life. Granted, you know, for me, it's an adjusting to the way things are today, as opposed to how they were through my history. You know, yeah, I am one of those older folk that sit kind of in the back of the room, but you know, I love it. It's just one of those really wonderful things. And you know, I'm so proud. I really truly am. And I'm so glad that you all invited me to do this. It's really made me understand, and you know, it really made me look inside myself. And when you look at all the different, like you said, Steve, all those different people that I mentioned a lot of people. Now remember, all those TBS national officers all had Kappa Kappa Psi counterparts. You know, I mean, I met J. Lee Burke. I mean, I thought that was a pretty cool thing. You know, as a Kappa Kappa Psi brother, there's not a whole lot of people that did, but that was one of those things back in the day. So again, thank you, Steve. And yes, we definitely have to sit down.
All right, perfect. We're gonna hit stop.